Right, today we are talking about Karen Reed. If you guys don't know who Karen Reed is, she is at the top, picture stated above. She did have trial already, and it ended in a mistrial. She has a new trial going around too, come end of January, and she is standing accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend's a state cop in Massachusetts, Mr. John O'Keefe, that is right below her. So we're going to take you back to January 28th of 2022. Karen Reed and her then boyfriend at the time, John O'Keefe, were going with a group of friends to meet in Canton, Massachusetts at a local bar called the Waterfall. And they, went out socializing, drinking, hanging out. Some of them were state cops, some of them were local cops, and decided they were just gonna, go from there and bar hop around. And they carried that on once they were hanging out at those bars, decided to go back to Brian Albert's house. So the picture below is Mr. Brian Albert. He lived at 34 Fairview. I know that address like the back of my hand now. We heard it multiple times because this is where John was located. Now, if it comes down to that night, they were drinking and socializing, and they decided that they were going to go back to Mr. Brian Alberts, who was a state police officer as well. And they're going to go back to his house and, continue drinking and hanging out. And they were really adamant that Mr. John O'Keefe would go there and continue hanging out with them. So much so that as the night goes on, you'll see how it unravels of not adding up. The pieces just weren't there. So Karen and and him, that they showed all the court records and all. You guys can watch the trial. It's on Court TV. It is on Law and Crime, and you can see how it's. I'll tell you right now, the most painful court process I've ever saw. That trial was so long and lengthy, we literally got nowhere. The Commonwealth failed epically and was unable to prove that Karen did what she did. So after having a few drinks at this bar, and they're going over to his house, Karen's driving. She, gets the information. They're going over to his house, getting the address. It's right around the corner from where the bar was located. And when they pull up, witnesses saw that they saw Karen had pulled up. People were looking out the window. Remember, there was you could call it a party, a gathering, if you will. There was like 14 people up in the household. So they definitely were hanging out, socializing, and drinking, and conveniently looking out the window, waiting for Mr. John O'Keefe to arrive. However, the homeowner says that he never came inside of the house. That they saw him pull up, but they figured they just left for the night. And at 6 o'clock-ish time in the morning, they found John O'Keefe on his front lawn. It was snowing, there was a blizzard going on, and he was located in the front. Now, what they're stating is that Karen, while intoxicated, was dropping him off, went to go do a three-point turn, or straight backed into him, and hit him and left him in the snow to die. That was what they were trying to portray. And the whole time, Karen's like, no, that didn't happen. I would have known if I hit somebody. In the very beginning, she did come out because she obviously had a few drinks. They had proven at least maybe 7 drinks. They couldn't quite pinpoint it. But they're trying. She even acknowledged that she had a couple of drinks, but not enough to not be able to drive. She was, they were all going to cops' house. If she was intoxicated that level with all that many police officers there, you would assume that nobody's going to let her drive John anywhere, right? Why wouldn't John just drive the car? He's a cop himself. So either way, she goes to go drop him off, and she states that she was looking down at her phone, and when she looked up, she didn't see him anymore, so she left. So carry on with that. as the night goes on, she's trying to call him. He's not answering his phone call. The last thing she knows is he's had a few drinks and she dropped him off there. And there's voicemails and everything that was left on John O'Keefe's phone from her. And she's stating, you're a fucking loser. Go fuck yourself. John, I fucking hate you. You're probably fucking cheating on me. Like the typical, I mean, I feel like if anybody's in a relationship and their significant other doesn't come home after you drop them off at a party that they know, they were drinking at and they're not answering their cell phone, it's just a logical thing, even if you trust somebody, to be like, hey, why are you not fucking answering your phone? So she had left voice messages there. And she stated that she went and dozed off for a little bit, maybe like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and noticed at around 5:07 in the morning, realizing, hey, he's still not home. Something's not right. He's not answering his phone. He's not returning my calls or texts. That's abnormal. So she immediately, meaning Karen Reed, calls up Miss Jen McCabe. Now, Jen McCabe, she's a fun little gem. Let me pull her up for you. Just so you have some other characters in mind that we're going to be talking about. We'll go back to them. Jen McCabe, the good old Jen McCabe here. Jen McCabe, old Sabretooth is what we like to call her, a little snaggletooth. She is a key player in this. So her sister is is married to Brian Albert, the homeowner where the body was located. So her sister she's the sister-in-law, basically. But she was hanging out with them the night before at the waterfall, went back to the house with them. She was one of the last people to leave that house that night. And she's stating, yeah, he never came inside the house. We were waiting for him. She says all these. And when I tell you lies, they're straight BS. Like this lady lied so much, I don't know how she didn't get perjury charges. But Jen, she was a key piece that night, because when Karen got up and did not get a hold of John, she called Jen McCabe because she was there last night. She knows her and she has some familiarities. Now, she calls her up, and at the time, she also calls up this woman named Carrie Roberts. Carrie Roberts is actually a really good friend of John O'Keefe's and was in the local area and, knows a lot about John, talks to him quite frequently. So she's, hey guys, I can't find him. He hasn't come home. I don't know what happened. And this is not normal. I really am going to go over to Brian's house and go check. And Jen McCabe's like, no, don't go over to Brian's house. I'm going to come to you with Carrie. We're going to come over there and we're going to look. They see his SUV is in the driveway still. So it's nothing too crazy. And when she pulls up with Carrie, they immediately go inside of the house and they search the house. There, maybe Jen is like, maybe you didn't notice and he's sleeping somewhere else in the house. Okay. So they go around, they look, they clear the house, realize that he's not there, and they decide they're going to get into the car and drive down to 34 Fairview and, just take a look. At that time, Karen's frantic. She's calling everybody that she could possibly think of. She's in the car like, hey, could he be at an ex-girlfriend? She lives around the corner. Could she be here? Could he be here? They're like, did you guys get into an argument? And she's like, earlier in the day, but we were fine. I dropped him off and he's not answering my phone calls and I haven't heard from him since I dropped him off. So, Jen's saying, hey, like he never came inside of the house. Like he never went there. Maybe you left him somewhere else, upon her many other lies. And so as they're driving and going and talking, they pull up to 34 Fairview. And mind you, it is snowing and there's a blizzard going on. And immediately Karen hops out of the car, runs over to the flagpole and realizes that that John is laying in the snow. So if you can look at the top picture, that is 34 Fairview, right in front of the flagpole, and in between, like where that fire hydrant is where John's body was lying. Now, at the time when they pulled up, they immediately go over, they check him, he's cold, starting to turn a little bit of colors, but Karen starts doing CPR while Jen calls 911. I love this the most because when Jen calls 911, she doesn't say, hey, the house that I was partying at last night, that, my brother-in-law's, one of the guys, she doesn't say that. No, no. She immediately goes into, there's a man that is unconscious or possibly dead on the on this person's grass. Gives him the address, 34 Fairview. Does not mention that it is her brother-in-law's house. Doesn't even sound like she has like she's even friends with them. Like, she didn't even say my friend was found here and not breathing. No, it was immediately, strict to business, and she cut out all that stuff. Of course, she spins a different story on the stand. However, that is what she said on the 911 call that we all heard. Didn't sound like she even had any sort of connection, and didn't, even say anything. So when the emergency responders come over there, they realize Karen is frantic at this point. You cannot talk to her. She's screaming. She's hyperventilating. She's crying. She doesn't know what to do. She's tried to do CPR. She's got blood on her from trying to give him CPR. And she just says, according to one person and Jen McCabe, that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. The defense argues that one of the first responding officers from Canton gave false and deceptive testimony to the grand jury that would later indict Reed. So because there was that one person that stated that was, what was said, that she had said, I hit him. Now, at the time, it was to be pointed out that Karen Reed had a crack in her Lexus SUV and in her taillight. And that tail light ended up being the demise of her, because they're trying to state that that's the proof that it hit John, and that's what caused him to, no longer be living. So at the time, Karen, she's still trying to figure out what happened. She's like, I know that I dropped him off here and I saw him leave. I would have noticed if he was laying there. And let's be real, there's like 16 people in the house having a party in the snow. You're not going to notice this 6'3" man in the snow. Even if they're coming and going, you're going to notice it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. You see all that stuff in the bright white sea. So either way, nobody saw him on that grass. Everybody left that place, and supposedly around that 12:30 in the morning area is when he got out of the car, and supposedly he was left there all night long. She hit him and left him there, and nobody saw him. They even went into great steps to call Lucky, which was the plow driver. Lucky had gone in and stated that he had been there a couple times that night. He said the first time he went by, didn't see anybody on the grass. The second time that he went by, he noticed that there was a car parked in front of that area in front of the flagpole, which is abnormal because he's hired to plow, and you're not supposed to park the cars there while they're plowing. And that's not normal for that family. And so he took note of that there was a car there, because, obviously, if you're not plowing a certain area, you got to explain why. And so he made note of that, but obviously it was blocking his peripheral. He didn't see anything, but he thought that it was strange and notated that. Come to find out that Lucky, the plow driver, was called for by the defense. The prosecution never contacted him. So it gets odd. It gets a lot more weird from here. Now, good old Jen McCabe. Oh, God, man. If she was definitely one of the number one most hated during this trial, because the way the woman turns off her emotions the whole time, even after this happened, she flips on her friend. Yes. And then all of a sudden Karen's guilty and she hit him with a car. At first, she never stated that she said, could I have hit him? And that's what she had originally stated. But of course, when the trial comes along and she's on that stand, she says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. It was one of the very few things that Jen McCabe actually remembered, because everything else she doesn't recall, conveniently, But what we found odd is they found John O'Keefe around 6 a.m. in the morning. And when Jen, being the last person to leave that night with her husband and not seeing anything, when she gets to her house, she does some odd Google searches. She's checking her kid's school, she's checking something. She also Googles at 2:27 in the morning, and we all know the 2:27 very well, because there was a lot of back and forth trying to prove that 2:27 Google search was actually done, because we have questions. So at 2:27 in the morning, She Googles, how's long to die in the cold? Now, let's go back to Miss Jen McCabe. Where's Snaggletooth at? Where are you at? Oh, go back. Okay. So here she is. She is saying that she did not do that. She Googled it the next morning because Karen asked her to Google those things. However, scientific data and satellite data and everything else that's in your phone timestamp stuff. So when you Google search, you can delete your browser like Jen McCabe did. She even deleted that she made the 911 call, which is odd. Why would you remove these things? So she did some odd deletions. She pretty much deleted every conversation that she had. And we thought that was very strange because that 227 became such a key piece of time. Why did you Google that when his body wasn't found until like 6:24 in the morning? So he was already supposedly dead on the lawn by 12:30. So why would you Google that, Jen? She also didn't sleep that night. They notated that the phone was very much in use, and there was only like a short window span of like, I don't know, like 30 minutes or something like that, that she wasn't on her phone. So unless she like took a power nap, she literally partied with them and popped right up conveniently to search for John O'Keefe with her friend, Karen. Now, this whole thing, at first Karen thought like she had a crack in the taillight. People had talked to her about it and was like, hey, could you have hit him? Do you remember anything? And she's like, I would think I would remember that, hitting somebody, and then I wouldn't just leave. So they kind of like, talked to her and said, could you have? And so she said, could I have? I don't think so, but I could have. I don't know. So in the beginning, her defense was like, she didn't intentionally mean to. But then as Dr. Turtleboy came along, and if you guys don't know Turtleboy, I suggest you follow along. He literally has covered this whole case from A to Z. We're like chapter 800 into this series, and he is great at documenting everything here from every single character going all the way back. And he talks about how in Canton, the police in that area, the state cops, the local cops, the DA, that they all have ties together, and they all have involvements in certain aspects of corruption from different cases. Even Auntie Bev, who is the judge of this trial, she even goes back with the Alberts. They rented her home that she has in Maine. They've also, the brother, which we're, yeah, man, I don't even know where to begin with these because there's so much information beyond that. This was a long, lengthy trial, like 3 months in. So there's so much to cover. And I'm just trying to give you guys a high level overview so we can kind of break things apart a little more in detail. But the brother, Chris Albert, he's on the town board of town council of Canton, Massachusetts. And he actually did a hit and run in like 1994, left the scene. A person died. And then there was another witness in the car, and somebody saved that witness. So they were able to pinpoint who it was. And Auntie Bev's brother got Mr. Chris off very minimal, like 9 months, and was able to be free. And I don't know how that all happens, but see, I'm just trying to paint the picture of corruption and how deep it runs. So Auntie Bev has always been against a lot of the things that make common sense. She's been kind of against it. She suppresses a lot of things. She sustains a lot of things when it comes to facts. She didn't let a lot of evidence come into play, but she let certain key pieces that should not have been, and we'll elaborate later on. But we just want to make sure that everybody is very well known who Jen McCabe is and why she's a key crucial portion of this, because her lies unraveled a lot. Now, they stated when they had the medical examiner, she came in, did the old autopsy, and determined that John O'Keefe, had died from blunt force trauma, and it was undetermined how it happened. So she listed it as undetermined. Now, the police that were involved in the case, Trooper Proctor, which he is currently suspended with no pay due to his mishaps during this trial. A lot of people were tired of his faulty, corrupt things that he did in this case that literally I don't think John O'Keefe's family is ever going to really know what happened to him. But we all know that a damn car didn't hit that guy. So going back in here, John O'Keefe, in his autopsy, you guys can look that up. That's public. I'm not going to share it all. I do have one picture right there. You'll see of his arm. Now, if you look at that arm, they were trying to say that the tail light burst open onto his arm when it hit him. And then he pirouetted and landed in the snow and hit something, some sort of object that, caused him to bleed 3 liters of blood, which were nowhere around John's body. He had there was a little bit of blood, but not that much blood. So that, I wondered why nobody questioned where did that much blood go. But, I guess we had bigger fish to fry because there was a lot more going on in this trial. And there was so many irrelevant witnesses from the Commonwealth. We sat through a lot of painful things that we were trying to figure out why they were even included. It had nothing to do with anything. I think they were just trying to prove characters, but either way, let's get back to Trooper Proctor. Now, I'll pull up a picture of Proctor in a little while, but I just wanted to talk about it because the homeowner, like I stated, was a police officer himself. His brother, Kevin Albert, worked at the Canton Police Department. And also the other brother was part of town council. So you already know that all the brothers are connected to the town. So because Kevin Albert worked in the Canton Police Department, they could not investigate anything that had to do with his brother's house. So they had to call in the state troopers, which conveniently Mr. Trooper Proctor shows up, and he is family friends with them. Chris Albert, the one that's a town council, the son was in his wedding. His son was like the ring bearer in his wedding. Like these families had ties. Either way, when Trooper Proctor comes to the scene, he does not do what I would consider a normal, type of police investigation where you tape off the crime scene and you do everything is everybody's question, and you go inside and you look around everything. That would be normal, right? But apparently when a man dies in the front of your lawn, you don't even have to talk to the homeowners in Canton, Massachusetts. Brian Albert stayed inside his house. The cops with ambulance, fire trucks, and about a ruckus that was going on, he stayed in his room. They have multiple stories about what happened in that situation, but we'll get there. I'm a high-level overview. Let me stop myself because, man, this case is just something else. So either way, homeowner does not come outside at all. So cops don't tape off the crime scene. As a matter of fact, they even leave for about 2 hours during that time frame before they come back. You're doing normal police routine here, right? Because if it was you or me, I swear to God, it would not go down like that. But either way, they also decide that they're going to pick up pieces, of evidence. Like they didn't find much. They found dude was missing a hat, a belt, a shoe. You would think, hey, if it's not here in front of where his body is, it could be in the house, right? He was supposed to go to the house that night. They said he never went in. Wouldn't you think that they would at least go in and clear the house? But did they? No, they never did. Not one time during this crime scene investigation did they ever step foot into that house. And that's where there's a problem here. So as everything starts going on, Turtle Boy comes forward and says, hey, wait a second here. As I do this and I see these timelines, and he starts sleuthing around with his people, and he starts coming up with, wait a second, Karen couldn't have done that, and starts explaining why. And so as they start looking into stuff and trying to get some key pieces of information, now Karen's got a better defense, and they're saying, hey, she's being framed. She's being framed by the people in the house. She's the only outlier. Everybody there knew each other besides Karen. Karen didn't know anybody there, just only through John O'Keefe. And so it was very convenient to, have Karen there and say she did this. But as everything got kind of broken down and people sleuthing around, because you know how sleuths do, They get to the bottom of certain things, and each day something else comes more about this Karen Reed trial that just is super alarming. And you're like, why is this woman even on the stand? Why is she even facing trial? What is happening? How did they even bring this to trial? Because it doesn't make sense. You have to prove that Karen did it. Let's get back to that. Trooper Proctor at the crime scene takes samples of blood that he finds, because there isn't a lot, but he finds some in the snow, and uses red Solo cups because, because that's the best that you could possibly find. Puts it in a good old Stop and Shop grocery bag so he could take it down to, how they normally just collect evidence, in a major murder of one of their brothers. Exactly like that. Comes with a leaf blower or snow blower to actually check the scene because there was snow, so they figured they blow evidence around because, typical type situation. And why wouldn't you? And they didn't find anything, so they figured we'll just wait till it defrosts with no crime scene tape, letting people go in and out of that house and not questioning it. Now, the key importance here of John O'Keefe's arm. When he had his injuries, and if you look up the autopsy photos, of which I will not show that, I will show just the arm. I feel like that's okay, because I want to express that night, the homeowners had a German Shepherd. And good old Chloe, I'm going to take this time. Chloe, we really hope that you're okay. We hope that you are really on a farm like they stated. But we all know deep down that you didn't make it out that house that night. You did too much. They told you to stop. But Chloe dog here, this is what we have a problem with, because those marks on his arm look very oddly like a dog bites or scratches. Now, if you zoomed in on it and you go look them up, it looks like that. Matter of fact, the defense called an expert for it that specializes in canine bites and scratches on living and dead, and she said without certainty that this was a dog bite. However, when they did the DNA testing, they did not swab his arm because that would be common sense, right? They swabbed his shirt on the outside. The outside of the shirt pulled up pig. Could it be from like a pig ear? Could it be from what he was eating in that night? I don't know. Why they didn't swab his actual arm is beyond me. You'll have to tell me. But either way, Chloe dog was there when the party started. The homeowner, Brian, said he had to go to the basement because the dog doesn't like people and it was getting all riled up. And by the end of the night, by the time the cops came the next morning, that dog was nowhere in the house. So dog biting, scratch marks, dog missing, I'm just saying it seems a little suspect, right? Because I ain't getting rid of my German Shepherd for sure. I got a German Shepherd too. I've been clawed up on accident by the guy, and I'll tell you, those back scratches I have a couple of them on my arms from him jumping up on me. So I truly believe that John O'Keefe was, whether it was an accident or not, something happened inside of that home. That's where he lost all of that blood. And then he was placed on that lawn. He wasn't there all night. He would have been purple by that time, and the blood would have been everywhere, and they would have found all the things. But of course, it takes 4 days later when they find pieces of the taillight. Now, we get to the taillight, okay? Taillight is a key piece of information because that's where they're basing this whole thing off of. If there was no crack in that taillight, they would have nothing to go off of. But because it was cracked, that night when Karen had left and she had gone to go to her dad's house, her dad living like 48 and 50 minutes away from where she was. During a blizzard, she drove there, parked the car in the garage. The cops came to that address. They towed her car, put it on a flatbed, and when they notated it, one of the officers that has no ties to them just simply stated on the stand that he noticed that there was a crack in the taillight. Now, once that travels back in a blizzard with the snow coming, all the way down to the Canton PD, which was odd because they passed 2 state barracks in that process. They could have brought it to one of those, but they brought it to Canton knowing damn well that it shouldn't be there. No evidence should be there because the brothers works there in the department, and it's his house, his brother's house. Like, Kevin, your brother, you shouldn't be looking at anything. There should be no evidence or nothing there. But either way, the car got towed all the way back to Canton. It was put in inside the bay where they investigate, and they call it a Sally port. They put it in the Sally port, and they, conveniently during that time, 42 minutes of camera footage is missing, and all of a sudden there's a shatter in the tail light. So on that same day on that same time frame where they have the car, and a couple of days goes by, conveniently these pieces of shard of the tail light were conveniently by that hydrant that you guys saw that was at the front over here. So they found it in the snow. They said that they had some people go in there and just, little by little, they were trying to go through the snow and find pieces, and they would dig with shovels, and they would find the pieces of the plastic, and they lifted up and placed them right where they thought they located them. That was what was stated. However, there was no blood or DNA ever notated on any of those pieces. So nothing on the car. There was no blood on the car. There was no blood on those pieces. They did, however, find a piece of hair that they were able to DNA test and say, oh, yeah, there's a piece of John's hair. So that hair clung on for dear life, because it literally stayed there through the whole travel. All right, before I get carried away, let's get back, because you know what? My mind just goes crazy, and I want to tell you guys every bit of this case. However, I don't want to lose you. I want to see if you guys are even interested in hearing more before we continue, because there's a lot of information on this trial. You guys can look up a lot yourself. I suggest looking at Turtle Boy. It's Dr. Turtle Boy on YouTube. He's live pretty much every day. TikTok. He's on there. He's on Facebook. They have a Facebook page, but he's covered every aspect of this and the corruption. And I say, if you want any good factual information, he's been in most of the trial. Actually, that's even crazy itself, because of him investigating so much and getting so deep in this case. He actually caught charges himself for harassment against Jen McCabe and fam. So there was sometimes that he wasn't even allowed in the courtroom because they were there and there was stay away orders, and all he was doing was reporting. So obviously he dug a little bit too deep, and we applaud him, because if it wasn't for him, Karen would be in jail right now. No doubt in my damn mind. But let's just go back to when Karen finally gets arrested. She gets arrested June 10th of 2022, and they indict her on charges of second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence of alcohol and leaving the scene of personal injury and death. So she pleaded not guilty in Norfolk Superior Court, and was ordered held on a $100,000 bail. So she was released out on bail, and the defense, come May 3rd of 2023, as the trial starts creeping up, the defense claims that she was framed. Now, the defense attorneys, Alan Jackson, if you haven't seen him, that man, oh God, I would vote for him for president. That man is just drop the mic. He says everything so beautifully, presents everything, and knows his shit. He was a prosecutor. He did prosecute Phil Spector, and he's been in a lot of different crime docuseries you can find on Netflix. If you look up Alan Jackson and see who he's covered of high-profile cases, he's top of his field. And then we had David Yannetti. David Yannetti also was a great, them two, dream team. Honestly, they were so amazing that I was just shocked when this ended in a mistrial, because they beautifully laid it out, and still people did not want to look at scientific evidence. I don't know when science lies, because that's why we base everything off of science, because it's facts. But either way, they came at a mistrial. They could not all come at an agreement, and that even is crazy. Okay, well, let's get back. So they say that there was some sort of fight at the Brian Albert home, and that O'Keefe was beaten and his body was later dumped outside. They specifically focused on those wounds that were on O'Keefe's arms, which show that they were attacked by the Albert's dog during the fight. And Jackson said, this is not just fishing. We got the fish on a hook. We just need the court to help us reel it in. He also says that certainly the Massachusetts State Police is involved. There are people that were in the house that are involved. Brian Albert is involved. Jennifer McCabe is involved. The rest of the folks that were in the house, there's some level of involvement by every one of them. Every single one of them. We're not going to rest until we get to the bottom of exactly who's behind this cover-up. Not only Karen Reed deserves this, but John O'Keefe deserves this and has deserved this from moment one. And that's why they're not going to rest. So he's stating, we already know this. Like we do, like these cops did so much corrupt. There was so much stuff they didn't do. Okay, conveniently, all the cameras that would have exonerated Karen were not working, so they couldn't determine. They could determine her going there, but couldn't return her returning, which would have showed the tail light. Conveniently, was missing. The ring camera footage that the police took, which Proctor had taken, and his good old boss Lally. No, not Lally. Yes, Lally? Yes, Lally. No, Lally was the prosecutor. What am I doing? All right, so let's get back to it. So Lally is the prosecutor, Lallygag. How can I forget it? Because that's all he did is a lollygag the whole trial. He was so fucking boring. I think between him and the ceiling fan, we literally were bored majority of the time until the liars got on the stand and we got to see the defense tear them to shreds each time. But this one was Tully. So Tully was the boss of Trooper Proctor. They had access to the ring cameras that were at John O'Keefe's property, which conveniently during those time frames went missing as well. They don't know when they're trying to retrieve it and they couldn't find it. So remember, going back and all that, the plot just gets worse, okay? We haven't even got into Mr. Higgins yet. Mr. Higgins is also works at the Canton PD as a detective DA. He has a special office over there in the Canton PD, so he's buddies, and he was partying with them as well. As we get deeper into the trial, we learn a lot of ups and downs. We learned that he also had a little thing going on with Jen McCabe. Now, Mr. Higgins had a thing going on with Karen Reed. They had exchanged some text messages and kind of flirty. It seemed like she was trying to get some attention from him. And, we told she's pretty. We told, just have someone that actually, wants her. I feel like she was lacking that in the relationship with John O'Keefe. And John also, his sister had died of cancer, and he took responsibility of his niece and nephew because the father passed away not too long after that as well. So he had to take guardianship of the children. So Karen was helping him. However, she's not a mom, and she, it's became over. We were getting over fights. Anybody that has children knows. Yeah, getting into fights over little things. She was spoiling them too much. John didn't like that, and their fights were pretty much, any normal couple type stuff. But it was, I feel like Karen was searching for that, attention, which Mr. Higgins gave so kindly to Karen. And as that goes on, you'll learn a little bit more about that situation as well. We'll break it down for you. I do want you guys to see actual courtroom footage that I'll pull up and we'll go over. Here, I just want to give you just this high level so you kind of have an idea. So as we dig a little further, and Higgins that day, when he was at the house partying with them, he had a plow on the front of his truck. Conveniently, nobody checked anybody else at the party. Nobody at the party was interviewed until a couple hours later, and it was done conveniently in Jen McCabe's household with all of them there. Why go to the police department, right? That you'd have to pass by the police department to get there, but they're going to meet at Jen's house. Also, they didn't go inside the house and talk to them. they went to their all one place, had them all go to Jen's, and they had a conversation. And basically right away, Trooper Proctor was like, okay, well, Karen did it. He immediately is not trying to get any. So I don't know what was conversated in between that building, but you remember, they're all friends. They all know each other, go back far. And the fact that they were able to have powwows about what was happening that night prior, all in one setting, even though on the stand they stated they were talked to individually. Let's be so for real. It was shady, because the rest of us, we're going down to the police department and we have no choice. They'll probably send us a car to take us right down there. But they're not going to go let us have a formal interview, non-recorded, inside of our homes. That's just not something that happens. But in this case, it did happen. Higgins that night left the party rather early. He had been drinking all day drinking with the buddies, and then went back there and had some more drinks. And, instead of leaving the party and going home like a normal middle-aged gentleman, he decides he's going to go back to the Canton PD. Because why not go back there conveniently after you don't know what's going to happen? But something, it just seems weird that he went back there. He said he had to move cars around, and he had to, file some paperwork. He came with a bunch of different things of why he was going there after a night of drinking and being off duty. I know a lot of cop friends, and none of them are doing that shit on their day offs. It's not going to happen. But this guy stayed. Went home for a little bit, got the phone call from, good old Brian over there, and goes right back to the house and finds out about John. Then goes back to the PD, and so have not slept, but he's back at the PD while all the evidence is conveniently rolling in. It just seems very odd. We just can only just go off of the evidence that was provided, that the defense, proved a lot of what were you doing? Why were you doing that? That is not what any other department does. So what's really going on here? Something's just they're not adding up. But Higgins is another character that he's got a lot more involvement. But let's get back to Mr. Colin Albert. Colin, let me see if I can pull up a good old gem picture of Colin for y'all. Now, this right here in this picture with the hat backwards is Mr. Colin Albert. Colin Albert is the nephew of Brian Albert, the homeowner. Now, that night, this kid was at the house. I believe he was 17 at the time, partying with his friends, and they were there. Oddly, nobody wanted to put him there until day of the trial. Magically, he was inside the house. But before that, he wasn't there at all. Multiple people were saying he wasn't there until his dad said, yeah, he was there. And his uncle put him in the house as well. So we wanted to know why it took forever for them to not list Mr. Colin being at the house. And then as the case got on and we caught more witnesses, he got picked up. They were really battling about the time, saying he wasn't there when John O'Keefe was there at all. He missed him. He left before John had even arrived at the house with Karen. But, they were able to prove based on satellites and, different things, especially Life 360 app. It is off by depending on what clock it uses, it could be off by 3 minutes, before 3 minutes, after 3 minutes. There's a lot. You can't really prove that to be so factual, but they did prove that he got picked up by Jen McCabe's daughter. And this was weird too. Jen McCabe states that she was trying to get a ride for her nephew over here, Mr. Colin. So she calls her daughter and says, hey, can you go pick him up? She says she's driving people around and she'll go pick him up. What mom is letting their kids go pick up drunk people or people that have been drinking as a teenager in a blizzard? This whole family did some shiesty shit for such people of high statures in the fucking community. It never made sense to me why, she just acts like it's normal. Yeah, everybody's kid goes out in a blizzard driving their friends that are hammered around or their family members. It just doesn't happen. But in this case, the son got picked up and, conveniently left supposedly. So Oddly, the more breaks out. This is the weird part about it is when it comes down to, for all y'all that have already known about Karen Reed, I think Colin has a lot more to do with it than they're even letting on. I think Colin got hot-headed. He was already proven to be a hothead. He had video recordings of him having a temper. We will elaborate on further videos or live so you guys can actually see. I want to show all the facts and findings presented in here. Just high-level overview, like I stated. But in this case, Colin, he deleted all his social media, got rid of his phone. The family all got rid of got rid of them. They didn't get an upgrade. They decided to get whole new phones because that's normal too, right? Higgins decides that he's going to take his phone and he's going to drive it to the military barracks. He's going to throw his phone in one dumpster and his SIM card smashed up in another dumpster because that's not suspect at all either, because that's just, he said, you know what, I was working an undercover case and I was spotted. And so they had my number and I had to get rid of the phone. Like, home dog, don't you just change your number? If someone outed you, why the fuck do you still have the same phone number? Like, you got a new phone, so now they magically can't call that same number? Like, these guys just make no sense. All of their conversations that they had were deleted. All of them, phones were destroyed, so they can't go back and look at anything that was held there besides whatever they could pull record-wise. But it's very, very bare minimum when you don't have the actual SIM card or the phone itself to be able to determine. So either way, I don't know how they didn't get in trouble for that. You told to turn over their phones, and magically everything's destroyed. It was weird with Higgins because he was told to turn his phone and he destroyed his phone the day before he was court ordered to turn his phone over. So tell me if that's not fucking odd and why he's not held. Also, I want to add on the Higgins portion. When Higgins came up to testify and be on that stand, he brought his own attorney. Have you ever seen a witness in a trial bring their own attorney and stand next to them? Why do you need to have your own attorney? It don't make no damn sense. So obviously, there was a lot more that he was scared of because he was using federal FBI equipment to be able to do some of the searches and things that he was doing, destroying evidence and everything else, or being their portion of it. We don't know how elaborate Higgins got into it, but we knew he was right at the right place at the right time with access and his badge being showing that he's been in those. Whenever you're inside of a police department and you are free range, you take a badge and you scan it to go in between certain rooms. So it knows where you're logging in at all times and how when you're in the building and when you're not. So this guy spent a lot of time in there with that evidence. And oddly, the case just gets weirder and weirder as we go along. Wait till you hear the testimony of him if you haven't already. Those are the key ones. If you're going to listen to anything in the trial, definitely listen to Jen McCabe, listen to Brian Albert, listen to Colin Albert, listen to Higgins, listen to Chris Albert. These are the key people. The rest of that I feel kind of meh. Trooper Paul, worst freaking crime scene guy ever. Guys, I could go on all day because this case just fires me up because there's no fucking way that a car hit that man. Experts came forward stating that. But anyways, let's slow it down again. Bring it back to reality, Coral. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I like how this mic, the clack clack is extra now. I love it. Okay. But let's bring it back to Colin. So now Colin, after this point, is deleted all social media. He actually wasn't interviewed, or they didn't remember he was there partying. They actually waited 18 months and then had a non-recorded, in the comfort of his own home, interview asking him about that night. Why they didn't ask him, if you were in the household that night, wouldn't you ask everybody who was in the household to see if they happened to see something? Why would you wait 18 months to interview them? Trooper Proctor already had in his brain stated Karen did it. And he had only at that time talked to Brian Albert, the homeowner, his wife, Nicole, and Jen McCabe. So 3 people he's talked to that all related to each other from the homeowner's house. And that's enough for him to say Karen did it. And nobody else is, even a suspect. We don't even need to ask anybody. We don't even need to go inside. Why? He said that he didn't come inside, so we didn't. We don't even need to check and see. You would think the cop would go inside and be like, let me just clear it. You know how it works, guys. You know the process. I'm just going to go and do a sweep. Say I saw every square inch of the inside of around the house. Nope, none of that was done. Now, it was very odd with Colin because Colin, they didn't want to put him in the house. They avoided that at all costs. They didn't want to, this kid was like, they wanted to portray him as just being this great kid. And honestly, did not work out very well when the defense had some questions for him. Because this lovely gem was found by Mr. Aiden Kearney, aka Dr. Turtle Boy, and he had deleted all social media. However, they were at a bar, of course, underage drinking, because that's what cop kids do. And as he's at the bar, these people they snapped a photo and they put it on the bar website. However, during this time, this was a month after John had, been something happened to John. Either way, he was no longer living. They noticed this gem on his knuckles. Now, if you look at that, it's scabbed up, but they look like they were healing and then reopened. So I love it because Jackson, once he gets him up on the stand, starts asking him about these knuckles and says, hey, that looks like a healing wound that reopened just recently. Like, what happened there? And he's like, oh, yeah. So I was drinking and I was holding a drink in one hand and I was walking on a driveway or something and I was slipping. So when I was falling, I braced myself with my knuckles down, like he-man that shit into the ground, boom, fist down, and supported his whole body weight. And that's what happened to his knuckles. You and I know, anybody who's been in a fist fight or who has been in a fight or altercation, even if you're punching a bag, okay, over and over again, that's what your knuckles look like, okay? You can't lie to us and tell us that you punched ice on the ground and that's what caused that wound. Either way, that's what they were trying to tell us. And he was sideblind. I didn't even know this picture was out there. So shout out to Turtle Boy because he literally, the sleuths do everything, man. They've saved Karen's ass during this trial for real. Turtle Boy, man, you have really crushed this. So let's just put Colin back in our back pocket for now. We'll be back with him because I do want to play that testimony. I do think everybody needs to hear it and kind of form your own opinions based on those, how he presents himself. Because I assure you, you will see why I feel the way I feel. It'll make a full total amount of sense to you. But let's get back to Mr. Trooper Proctor. Okay. He is the lead investigator on this case. And during the case, he was on full duty. However, after they got the mistrial, he was suspended with no pay. Now, he's union. They don't take away cops' pay without significant reason. So now I'm going to bring you guys back to June 6th of 2024. Defense attorney Alan Jackson told reporters that Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor, who Reed's attorney had tried to show could have planted evidence to help friends who are witnesses in the case, will take stand as a witness. So this was a big key person in this, and this is the reason why he got investigated, because the things that this trooper did as the lead investigator were very questionable. Actually, there was a lot of gasps in the courtroom. The jurors were gasping at a lot of the things that he said. He definitely did some crazy, besides the shoddy evidence pickup that he did there and not taping off the crime scene and not locating a lot of things and all this bullshit. Just aside from that, going a little deeper into it, after the 16-hour mark of even just getting this case, he had already messaged his buddies, school buddies, and was joking about Karen, going into elaborate details of her body type and talking about her leaky balloon knot. That was what comment, because she has MS and she's had some issues. And so he's like making fun of that. He's talking about she has no ass. He's talking about her and he's like, yeah, that bitch did it. Like, you don't even know this lady and she's a bitch. You're talking to people about it. And then even his friend was like, so you're saying, like, what about the homeowner? He's a cop. And he's like, yeah, nothing's going to happen here because he's a cop too. He's so they basically, he's already reassuring them that it's Karen all the way. They don't need to talk to anybody else. He talked to 3 people. It's good enough. It's her. Just leave it alone. The bitch did it. And he talked about her so derogatory. It was disgusting to hear the things that he said. He was even saying he was embarrassed by it. His wife, like, she's like, I stand by my man. And I'm sorry, but if I'm hearing my man on a stand sit there and talk about a woman the way that he did, of not even knowing her, he's asking to look for nudes in her phone. These are nothing found there yet. They're having conversations. Even his boss, Tully, was involved with these conversations. And now finally, as of last week, Tully is, I think he got a slap on the hand. Like, he got 6 of his like PTO days taken away. Like, oh, what a good punishment there for someone who allowed and you're supposed to be doing. There's so much wrongdoing in this case that he shouldn't be getting paid either. All of them started getting investigated. Kevin Albert, all of them. And there's more to that too that we can go on all day about. But let's get back to the high level overview. So after Trooper Proctor takes the stand and says all these derogatory messages that he sent to the colleagues and everything else, he was grilled over messages, because there was one where he's talking to his sister and he's saying, hopefully Karen kills herself. And that was a big key piece. Is like, you don't even know this lady, but she's a bitch. You're talking about her in a negative, derogatory way, and you want her to kill herself. For what? Like, I just don't understand why he had so much animosity towards this woman when he didn't even know her and didn't even get a chance to even try to talk to her or anything. He automatically formed that opinion in his brain. So this is the kind of guy that you want really definitely taking the lead to the case, right? Very disgusting. But they literally, after pulling in all this evidence, they had, I think, over 76 witnesses on the prosecution side, of which none of them were able to show beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen even did this. It happened. Karen, it was proven, actually, the defense called only 4 witnesses, one being the plow truck driver, Lucky, and one that was the dog expert, or canine bites. One of them was a crash expert, the Crash Daddy. We loved that guy. Boy, do we love Crash Daddy. He was so excited about science and trying to prove that, in any means way that a car hit John, which he could not determine. Every single one of these people who are a doctorate at their level were determining that there's no way that any car hit John O'Keefe. There was no bruising on John. He had those cut wounds on his arm. He had some black and blue, which could have been from the big blunt force trauma to the head. And he had a little bit of a cut right here. And nothing from the waist down. He had nothing. So you're telling me a car hit him at 24 miles per hour and there's no bruising or broken bones? Like, everybody that was a doctor of their field stated this is what they see. They've never once seen a car hit somebody and not have at least bruising. So with that evidence alone, you would have thought that all 12 of the jury members would have come back with a not guilty verdict. But they came back in a mistrial. There was 3 major charges, and what was odd is after the mistrial was declared, which, let's get into that. It took them a couple days to determine, to even get it. They had to do it to Rodriguez, and they had to kind of send them back into the room and say, hey, you guys got to come to an agreement on this. You got to figure out at least something, guilty and not guilty, by reasonable means. And they ended up coming out and saying, hey, we can't agree. And it was a beautifully written out note of stating why they did not agree and that they couldn't come to it based on morals, and they're deeply divided. And so, of course, Auntie Bev doesn't ask anymore. She just says, you know what? Mistrial. But after the trial's over, 6 of the jury members came forward with signed affidavits stating that they said not guilty on the major charges. They were all caught up on the lesser charges, like drinking while intoxicated and leaving a scene. But the other ones, they said not guilty. But Auntie Bev never asked. So there was no, if she would have asked that, then they wouldn't be trying her again. They should have at least tried her for the lesser charges. And okay, like if that's the case and she was getting it was drinking and driving, then every single one of those cops should have had those charges. They were drinking all day and drove the same route that Karen did. So either way, they shouldn't be trying her again. They tried to, her attorneys came forward like double jeopardy, stating, hey, why are you having another 12 jury members come forward and try to determine the fate when they already said not guilty for those major charges? Either way, Auntie Bev said, nope, we gonna do it again. No matter what they come up with, it's always, she never wants to hear it. She never wants to, take any portions of it. They've been trying to dismiss it. So the defense wants to dismiss the 2 charges, saying that the jury unanimously agreed that she was not guilty on those accounts while being deadlocked on the 3rd charge. And so following that, like I said, Proctor was suspended without pay, and that was since July 8th. July 9th, the union called it disappointing because he has a family, but they couldn't stop that. So whatever. Then the Canton police officer, Colin Albert, which is Brian Albert's brother, the homeowner, was put on a leave related to the testimony during the trial. We'll have to get into that so you guys can understand why Kevin is also a fun little, character there. So getting back to that, this was also weird too. The homeowner, after this happened, they sold their house, but before they sold their house, they refinished the basement and the kitchen. The kitchen was hired by a third party, and because the kitchen and the basement were done around the same time frame, they were asking, okay, so you guys did the basement? And they said, no, somebody in their family did the basement. So somebody tied to a Turtle Boy breaks it down. So like I said, he got all the facts on this case, but it was odd that if you're doing a basement remodel, and if you guys go to my TikTok and go all the way down, I have a lot on Karen Reed, and there was a key photo that nobody can seem to find anymore, but I have it on my page. Only a couple people caught it, but when they were trying to sell the house, there was a before picture before the remodel took place. And in that room, the carpet looks suspect. There's like bleach shoe print stains. It looks like some red, it could be some dried blood or some old something. It looks suspect either way. And then because they had posted that on Zillow before, when they were trying to sell the house, and then conveniently after the whole remodel was done, then they swapped out that picture and put the refinished portion of it, but not before people could get that clip and use that, because it was very key suspect photo. I'll have to pull it up for you guys on my TikTok. It's Coral and Dexter on TikTok. I'll have to pin it so you guys can see, because that one was really critical. I feel that that's where John O'Keefe lost his life, was in that basement. My speculations and my theory is that when he got out, they called him and said, hey, all the dudes are in the basement, come around the backside. He goes right into the basement, and almost the seconds that he's in there, there's an attack. I think Colin was involved, and they were drinking, and the dog saw, people fighting, and he stepped in to protect his people, which makes sense. And maybe he accidentally hit his head, or during that altercation. Either way, there was defense wounds on the back of John's hands, so it did look a little suspect. And God, the more I think about it, the more there's so much more. But I feel like that's where he lost his life, was down there. And then they tore up the basement, even the cement. Why? They were stating the reason why they did the remodel, because they had remodeled the basement 4 years prior. Why would you remodel it 4 years later? And to the extent that they did, he said because of there was a pipe that was leaking from the bathroom, and now there was no bathroom down there. So I don't know, but either way, water damage, you don't need to tear up the cement. So some shit is definitely not right about that basement. We all have speculation on that basement. And since nobody looked there, and it's already been sold, and now there's new homeowners, which the feds did go inside. So I don't know if the feds have found anything and we just don't know about it, or what the homeowners agreed to. But we do know that they did go inside of the house after they were the only ones to step foot in there, because the cops never did. Even to this day, never did they go in there. They said they didn't have reason to. I guess a dead body on your front lawn is not a good enough reason for these cops to actually go inside of the house. I'm saying if it was at my house, it'd be like a SWAT fest over here. They'd be going into my neighbor's house and everything. So I don't know why this, sometimes you just it's things that make you go, but sponsored by Red Bull. This case, though, just keeps getting crazier and crazier. The more you dig, the more you find. And I assure you that we can't, it would be honestly months of videos to catch you up to where we are today, because this has gone, like I said, every day it's something, and they're finding new shit, and Turtle Boy keeps uncovering a lot of things himself. We found out a lot of information just from sleuthing around on Turtle Boy's side. And guys, even just so from what I'm telling you, I assure you, Karen did not do this, and we need to free her, free Karen Reed, because this is just outrageous that we're still having to go through another trial, and we're going to have to sit through this all over again, which the lead prosecutor, or the prosecutor, he has now stepped down. There's somebody else that has taken over, and God help us. Okay, this one's going to be some doozying here, which God, I just can't get into that right now because I don't want to throw everybody off. I just want to, just get you guys the lump sum for some of my people that asked me to do it, because they were trying to get just a synopsis of what has happened during the trial, and then kind of go over it. So that way you guys could determine if you're interested in even hearing more about it, because we could go on all day. There's literally so much. And we just have so many damn questions. We know the involvements that night. We know Higgins wasn't a big fan of Brian. We know Brian and John O'Keefe had some issues prior. Chris Albert lived next door to John O'Keefe at one time, and his son, Colin Albert, and had like exchanged words. So there was a lot with this whole thing going back, where to me it sounded like a setup, like they were setting John up with the intentions, knowing that he wasn't going to walk out there alive. And I truly believe that everything that we've seen up into this point, facts wise, it does add up to that. I do believe there's more to that story that whole family knows about and is remaining silent together. But everybody's since relocated, moved, and I just really feel bad, because I want John O'Keefe to get justice. I want justice for his family, not his brother, Paul. Paul, you are a gem yourself, and we will get into Paul at a later date, because that's a whole live in itself. It's a whole hour special. But it's I feel bad for the family, However, I don't, because there's enough provided to you that Karen didn't do this. And you guys are still trying to blame Karen without even taking the possibility. Like, if you want justice for your son, aren't you going to look at all angles? Wouldn't you want to look at what, if the cops did have involvement, why did they not treat your brother's crime scene like they would anybody else? Or like a high profile case, or if it was just you or me, there would be more stuff going on. But why did he not get top of the line search there? That was a big issue for me, that this is how they collected your family members' evidence. This is how they treated the crime scene. They had tampered with so much, and none of it makes any sort of sense. So guys, you guys literally got to let me know if you want to hear more, because I will definitely do. I like, this case is crazy. I have so many people behind the scenes I could pull up for you that know this case ins and outs as well. I have my good friend Britt. She is actually going to be flying out here. They have an event for Karen Reed coming up soon, where all creators get to go and kind of hang out with and do an event for Karen, and meet Turtle Boy and all the big key people. Wish Nurse Kim was going to be there, but she has a prior obligation. But this thing is just going to keep going on, because nobody wants to stop. They have no quit, and we're just trying to free Karen Reed and scream free Karen Reed until she's free, because we know that she didn't do this. No vehicle hit this man, and somebody else is at fault, and people are covering it up. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thanks for hanging around with me. I hope you guys enjoy. I'm loving this new mic. I'm learning and trying to, figure out the YouTubey over here. So, but let me know if you guys are interested in hearing more. I will definitely be willing to put up more evidence, get some key people on here to talk. Actually, if you guys look at Duty Ron, if you guys shout outs to him and his community, if you go on to Duty Ron's page, he has covered Karen Reed as well as Sandra Birchmore. Sandra Birchmore, Trooper Proctor, was involved in that as well. In that case, guys, that's a whole nother thing in itself of cop cover up with these same DAs, same chief of police, going all the way up. There's a lot going on in this area of Canton for sure. But let me know. This is just a high level overview. If you guys want to do an independent journey, you could go to Turtle Boy. If you guys are willing, or you want me to go and cover more, please let me know, because I have no problems. I could talk about it all day long, because this one is close to my heart. This is where I first started my first case that I covered going on TikTok. So I definitely studied daily on this, watched the whole trial, and it was so painful. And we had powwow discussions with it. So I have a lot of key players that I could bring forward that can elaborate further. I could also, talk to Duty Ron as well. I'm sure he'd be willing to have a conversation about everything going on currently up until this time. But I hope you guys have a great night. Don't mind my that white noise in the background of my ancient heater. It is freezing and I'm cold, so I wasn't going to sit here and not have that dinosaur on, because it's chilly. I hope y'all have a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, y'all.